I never imagined that the moment my daughter came into money, the first thing she'd do is cast me aside like garbage. But that night, as rain soaked through my sweater and her security lights blinded my swollen eyes, it wasn't the storm that broke me. It was my daughter's voice, slicing through the night like glass. "You'll never see a dime of my money, you old witch." My suitcase hit the concrete just as she said it, bursting open like a popped blister. Clothes I'd folded only hours before spilled across her pristine driveway. Underwear, socks, an old blouse I used to wear when babysitting her kids. My toothbrush rolled into the gutter like it knew it didn't belong anymore. She didn't flinch. Her new boyfriend, barely older than her own son, stood behind her, arms crossed, smirking like he'd just won a prize. The mansion behind them was still half wrapped in real estate ribbons. She hadn't even taken down the sold sign. I stood there, no shouting, no begging, just quiet. Rain slicked my hair to my scalp and bled mascara into the creases of my face, but I stayed still. Her kids weren't home. Thank God. They didn't see their grandmother get discarded like a worn-out mop. "You're a leech," she screamed. "I worked hard for this. You don't get to mooch off me just because you're old." Worked hard? My jaw tensed, but I still didn't speak. Not yet. Not when I knew the truth she didn't even bother to hide. She'd won the lottery 10 days earlier. $10 million. Just like that. And overnight I became dead weight. She used to say if we ever hit it big, we'd travel together. Buy a duplex. I could have my own place, and she'd still have me nearby for the kids. She told her friends I was her rock. But the moment the check cleared, she didn't even leave me a blanket for the night. I picked up my socks off the pavement slowly, one by one. My hands trembled from the cold, but I refused to let her see me cry. She stared at me with those eyes I used to kiss goodnight. Now they were empty, flat. "Get off my property, or I'm calling the police," she said. "You have no right to be here." No right. The words lodged somewhere behind my ribs. I wanted to scream. "I paid your rent for 4 years. I raised your babies while you bounced between jobs. I gave up my retirement to help you start over, again and again." But I didn't, not then, because I wasn't ready to give her the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. Instead, I clutched my suitcase and stepped back. The rain mixed with the dirt on my shoes, turning everything into sludge. She thought I'd crawl, that I'd come back, tail between my legs, grateful for crumbs. But she'd made one mistake, one small oversight that would cost her everything. She never checked the name on the lottery ticket. A couple weeks earlier, we were still a team. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I was cooking dinner, folding the kids' laundry, covering half the bills out of my pension without complaint. She was between jobs again, something temporary, while she figured out her next move. I never asked too many questions. I just did what I always did, hold the line for both of us. That little house, the split level with the cracked tile and the chipped banister, was still filled with noise and mess and cartoons on too loud. It wasn't perfect, but it was home. And we had this habit, her and I. Whenever life felt too heavy, too bleak, we'd swing by the gas station and each grab a lottery ticket. It became our little ritual. "Could you imagine?" she'd say, holding up her ticket like it was a golden passport. 10 million. No more ramen. No more calls from debt collectors. I'd laugh and say something like, "Yeah, maybe I'll finally get that porch swing I keep talking about." We never really expected to win. That wasn't the point. It was hope. Shared between us in $2 slips. A way to dream without commitment. Some weeks, we forgot. Others, we'd come home and line the tickets up on the table and pick our favorite numbers. She always liked birthdays. I chose random ones, just to mess with fate. "If I win," she used to say, grinning, "we split it down the middle. I got you, Mom." She always said that, "I got you." And I believed her. God help me, I believed her. Even when she didn't pay her half of the water bill. Even when she rolled her eyes when I asked her to clean up the living room before the boys got home. Even when she left me watching her kids so she could go to interviews that somehow always ended at bars. She had her moods, but I made excuses for them. She's just tired. She's trying her best. She doesn't mean it. Because that's what mothers do. We cushion the blows. We carry the weight they don't even see we're holding. But that week, something was different. She started acting strange, pulling away, jumping when her phone rang, snapping at the boys, whispering behind closed doors. I thought maybe she was depressed again. Or overwhelmed. I didn't push. Then Thursday came. We were watching TV, some local news segment about a winning lottery ticket sold just down the road. Same gas station we always went to. Someone in this neighborhood's a millionaire, the anchor said. She shifted on the couch, didn't smile. You ever buy from there? She asked, casual. Yeah, I said. Grabbed one Monday with the groceries. Why? She shrugged. Just curious. Didn't even look at me. The next morning, the ticket was gone. Not in the drawer. Not behind the magnets. Not on the fridge. I looked everywhere, my heart sinking with each cabinet I opened. I didn't ask her. I didn't want to believe it. Because we always played together. And she promised, if we ever won, we'd share it. But that's the thing about promises made in comfort. They don't always survive opportunity. That lottery ticket wasn't a dream. It wasn't a joke. It was mine. I remember buying it so clearly, more clearly now than even what I had for breakfast that day. I'd been standing in line behind a man yelling on the phone, his voice full of rage, cursing about some broken deal. I just wanted to get my milk, maybe a pack of gum, and get home. But something tugged at me. Maybe boredom, maybe fate. The clerk smiled when I reached the counter and asked if I wanted a ticket. I almost said no, but I heard myself say, yeah, sure, quick pick. It cost me $2. I still had the receipt, tucked in my wallet. I left the ticket pinned to the fridge, with a magnet shaped like a smiley face. A stupid, cheerful magnet holding up a future I didn't know I was about to lose. When I got home, she was in one of her moods, talking fast, pacing the kitchen, venting about a recruiter who ghosted her. I didn't interrupt. I never did. Just nodded and tried to soothe her with a fresh cup of tea and some leftover pie. I bought a ticket, I said, trying to lighten the mood. Maybe we'll finally get out of this old place. She didn't laugh. She didn't even smile. She just said, yeah, that'd be something, and kept scrolling through her phone. I stuck the ticket on the fridge and forgot about it. She didn't. That night, she made dinner. Something she rarely did. Poured wine like we were celebrating something, though she never said what. She even kissed me goodnight. The next morning, the ticket was gone. She left the magnet. Just the magnet. A hollow smile staring back at me every time I opened the fridge for milk. She didn't mention it. I didn't ask. Because I wanted, desperately, to believe in her goodness. But that was before she came home with new shoes. Before she started whispering on the phone, pacing the hallway at midnight. Before she shut the door in my face and told me she needed space to think. I kept quiet. I hoped. I waited. Until I didn't. Because days later, she stood in the middle of the living room, my living room, grinning like a child on Christmas morning, and said, "You're not gonna believe this." She held up a check. $10 million. I won, she said, voice trembling with glee. I actually freaking won. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at her. And that's when I knew. She was lying to my face. Because she never buys tickets, never carries cash, hates waiting in line, hates small talk with cashiers. And yet somehow, suddenly, she had the winning numbers? I forced a smile. Wow, that's incredible. She hugged me hard. I'm finally getting us out of here, she said. We're going to have the life we deserve. We. But I knew better. That we had an expiration date. And it was coming faster than I wanted to believe. Because she never once looked at me like she meant it. And I had a gut feeling I couldn't shake. She took my ticket. And she had no idea what she'd really stolen. 3 days later, she was gone. Not a goodbye. Not a note. Just a missing toothbrush, a half-empty closet, and silence where her car used to be. I would have thought she was out running errands if it weren't for the neighbor. "Hey," Mr. Frank said, standing by our shared fence, a cigarette between his fingers. "Saw a moving truck out front around 5 this morning. Thought you were heading out." I blinked. "Moving truck?" "Yeah, U-Haul. 2 guys loaded up boxes. She was directing him in heels and a robe." I swallowed. My stomach went cold. I hadn't even heard the truck. I'd been up since 4 with a bad hip and worse thoughts. But somehow she'd slipped out while I was in the back garden pulling weeds like a fool. She didn't just leave. She escaped. That's the word that stayed with me, like I was something to run from. A burden she'd finally cast off. I checked the kitchen. Her mug was gone. The one I gave her when she graduated. Strong women raise strong daughters. It used to sit beside mine every morning. Now it was just me. And the magnet on the fridge. I walked over to it slowly, pressed my hand flat against the smooth white surface, and stared at the spot where that ticket had been. It wasn't a joke anymore. It wasn't just a suspicion. She had taken my ticket. And now she was gone. I called her once. Just once. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I didn't beg. I'd spent too many years waiting for her to choose me over convenience. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the chair she always used to slump into after a long day, moaning about life being unfair. Unfair. That word echoed around me like an insult. I thought back to how I'd held her hand during childbirth, how I paid off her debts when she lost her second job, how I canceled my own trip to see a dying friend, just so I could watch her kids when she ran off to find herself in Arizona for 3 weeks. And now? She'd moved into a mansion paid for with my money, bought with the winning ticket she stole right out of my house, off my fridge. She had called it a miracle, a blessing, but she forgot something. The name. She never once flipped the ticket over. She never checked who signed it. And that tiny act of arrogance, that's what would unravel it all. I wasn't the same woman who used to wipe away her tears and tell her it would all be okay. No. I was the woman who signed that ticket. And I was done being quiet. She was gone. But not invisible. Not to me. I saw everything she did because she couldn't help herself. She flaunted that win like a badge of honor, parading it across Facebook, Instagram, even tagging local news stations. "From broke single mom to millionaire queen," she wrote under a photo of her on the steps of a marble white mansion, drink in hand, legs crossed like she belonged there. Her smile was wide, but I knew it too well. It wasn't joy, it was gloat. And the people she was celebrating with? Cousins she hadn't called in 5 years. Old high school friends who once talked about her behind her back. Suddenly, they were all family again. And me? I vanished from her narrative completely. No, thank you, Mom. No, we did it. Not even a picture of the house we used to share, where I raised her, where I helped her raise her own children, where I cleaned up her messes and held her together when she was falling apart. She cut me out like I was a wrinkle in her perfect new life. But I didn't shout. I didn't comment. I didn't post a single thing. I just watched. Because in her arrogance, she forgot one thing. I was still her mother. And mothers notice. I saw her status change from seeking employment to private investor. Saw her tag a luxury real estate agent in a story captioned, "Starting Fresh." Saw her post boomerangs of champagne flutes clinking in rooftop bars, while her boys played in the background, unattended. The image of my grandsons in that chaos made something in me go cold. She'd traded structure for spectacle. And me? She replaced me with a nanny who couldn't even spell their names right in captions. But the worst part wasn't what she showed off. It was what she stopped showing at all. The boys. Less and less. First, just 1 photo a week. Then, nothing. And I knew what that meant. She was busy, distracted, self-absorbed. She was chasing a life she never built for herself. Not really. Because the truth? She hadn't earned that money. She'd stolen it. And whether she knew it or not, she was building her dream house on sand. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I needed more than anger. I needed proof. So I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years and pulled out the folder with my receipts, my old grocery lists, and yes, the photo I took of that ticket the day I bought it. Just for fun. There it was. Blurry, tilted, but legible. Date, time, location, numbers. Mine. I printed it, tucked it into my coat pocket, because she may have walked out on me. But I was about to walk right back into the truth. And this time, I wouldn't be the one erased. I didn't go to her. Not yet. I went to the gas station. The same one where I'd bought milk, picked up canned beans, and paid bills on instinct for the last 15 years. The man behind the counter, Ben, knew me by name. "Ms. Evelyn," he called as I stepped in. "Long time no see." I smiled, but it felt tight on my face. "Ben, I need to ask you something. Do you remember the lottery ticket I bought last Monday? The one I joked might change my life?" He laughed. "Yeah, I remember. You said you were going to buy yourself a beach house and leave your daughter the dishes." I didn't laugh with him. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "That ticket's missing, and someone else is claiming they bought it." His face dropped. "Wait, you're saying that winning ticket?" "I signed the back," I said. "I always do." He blinked. "Well, damn. I can check the security footage, if you want." My knees nearly gave out. "Could you?" 10 minutes later, he brought me into the back room. The screen was small, grainy, but there I was. My coat, my bag, my gray roots showing under my knit cap, handing over a bill, and getting that little slip in return. Then pulling a pen from my purse and writing something. My name. I covered my mouth. "Ben, would you mind if I recorded this?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Go ahead." I took out my phone and hit record. No words, just proof. Later that day, I called the state lottery office. I told them everything. When I bought the ticket, where I bought it, that I had surveillance, a photo of the numbers, and most importantly, my name signed on the back. The woman on the phone paused when I finished. Then she said, "I'm going to need you to send over everything you have. We'll open an investigation. If your name is on the back, and it matches the footage, the payout can be legally challenged." I didn't flinch. I didn't gloat. I just asked, "Can you freeze the winnings?" She answered, "Once the investigation is formally opened, yes." I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat there in my small kitchen, the one she used to mock for being dated, and finally let myself breathe. I didn't text her. I didn't call. Let her keep sipping champagne in her rented luxury. Because while she was busy buying Versace and burning bridges, I was letting the facts do what years of love never could. Hold her accountable. And the best part? She had no idea what was coming. Not yet. But when the money stopped flowing, and the people stopped cheering, and the silence crept in like rot, she'd look up and realize the woman she called a leech was the one holding the pen all along. The first thing she did with the money, after disappearing, after cutting me out, was buy followers. Not literally. But that's what it felt like. Overnight, her profile turned into a showroom. Designer bags, poolside brunches, bragging about spending 10 grand on a single shopping trip like it was pocket change. And then it got worse. She started talking about me. It began subtly. A post about cutting out toxic people. Then a photo of her toasting with old friends, under the caption, "Finally free from leeches. Surround yourself with winners, not beggars." I read it twice. Then I looked at the comments. Laughter, applause emojis. Her friend Tasha, "We always knew she was dead weight." Someone else, "Good riddance to the old moocher. Live your life, girl." I scrolled through dozens like that. My face burned. My stomach turned. They didn't know me. They didn't know the woman who skipped meals so her daughter could have seconds. The one who co-signed the lease when her credit was in the gutter. The one who held her granddaughter's hand through a fever and cleaned vomit out of the carpet while her mother went clubbing to clear her head. They didn't know what I gave, because my daughter never told them. She'd erased me with a few keystrokes and let strangers paint me as some pathetic parasite. I didn't respond, I just screenshot every comment, every post, every tag. And then I printed them. Because while she was out shopping for clout, I was sitting with a lawyer named Dana, referred by a retired neighbor who'd been through something similar. Dana wore glasses, spoke with precision, and never once asked me if I was sure. She read my documents silently, my receipts, my signed photo, the surveillance screenshots, and when she was done, she looked me in the eye and said, "This isn't just fraud. It's theft. And you have a case." I nodded. "I don't want revenge. You want what's rightfully yours." Yes. We submitted everything that afternoon. By the end of the week, the lottery office confirmed. Investigation active. Payout frozen. Public announcement delayed. Still, I said nothing to my daughter. Because what's the point of warning someone who's already burning the bridge behind them? Let her walk further out on that ledge. Let her mock me louder, while the foundation crumbled under her heels. The more she posted, the more she exposed, and she had no idea who was watching. Not anymore. She kept going, louder, meaner, more smug. But I didn't respond. Not a text, not a call, not even a warning. Because when someone's dancing in the middle of a storm they can't see coming, you don't scream at them to stop. You just wait. While she posted photos with captions like, "Real queens don't ask for permission," I was sitting in Dana's office again, signing a formal affidavit confirming the date, location, and circumstances of my purchase. While she uploaded videos flaunting her independence, I quietly forwarded bank statements showing my old balance before the money vanished. Evidence of who I was before she walked out with my future in her purse. I stayed silent, and it became my greatest weapon. Because my silence forced her to fill the void with noise that exposed her ego, her impulsiveness, her complete lack of care for anyone but herself. She'd been calling relatives we hadn't seen in years. "We should catch up," she'd say, dangling trips and gifts like bait. People who never even remembered her birthday were now in her comments, pretending they loved her. And me? I watched. Not with jealousy, not even sadness anymore, with clarity, because she was making the same mistake over and over again, thinking love meant control, that power meant possession, that money could buy a clean slate and memory loss. But what she didn't realize was that while she was treating this win like a fantasy, I was building something solid. A case. A foundation. A future she no longer had any place in. Dana called me late one evening. "The Lottery Commission has officially acknowledged your claim. They're freezing all associated accounts linked to the winning ticket until the matter is resolved. The payout is on hold indefinitely." I sat in my kitchen, a cup of tea in my hand, listening to those words like they were music. "Do I need to inform her?" I asked quietly. Dana chuckled. "No, the banks will do that for you." And sure enough, 2 days later, her social media went quiet. Dead quiet. No posts, no stories, no luxury hauls, no champagne bubbles. Just silence. I imagined her waking up, trying to use her card, and watching the screen flash declined. I pictured her trying again, frantic fingers, confused voice, and then finally, panic. But I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. Because this wasn't about vengeance. It was about dignity. Mine. I had done everything right. I had loved her beyond my limits, sacrificed beyond reason, given without taking, and she repaid me with exile and mockery. But now? Now she was getting exactly what she gave me. Nothing. The state verified everything. Every timestamp, every camera angle, every grainy second of footage that showed my hand taking that ticket, sliding it into my purse, signing my name in shaky pen. It was mine. They didn't even hesitate. "This will move forward to public announcement," the official told me. "We'll be issuing a correction and planning a press release for the true claimant." She said, "true claimant," like it was a title, a role I had earned just by being honest. And for the first time in months, I felt seen, not as someone's mother, not as a doormat or a burden, but as a person who had held on to the truth, even when it nearly crushed her. I hung up and stared at the quiet house around me. No chandeliers, no echoing staircases or ocean views, just the kettle, the fraying curtain, the chipped paint by the sink. And yet, it felt more like home than any mansion ever could. I didn't rush to tell anyone, not even the neighbor who'd lent me a casserole dish and once whispered, "You're too good to be treated like that." Because this wasn't about proving something to them. It was about proving something to myself, that I hadn't gone crazy, that I hadn't imagined her change, her coldness. The moment she stopped seeing me as family and started seeing me as competition, she thought I'd stay silent forever, that I'd be too embarrassed, too small, too old to fight back. But she forgot. Quiet doesn't mean weak, and dignity doesn't ask for permission. I looked out the window that night, the sky dark and starless, and let myself feel something I hadn't in weeks. Peace. Because I didn't just get my ticket back. I got me back. The version of myself that knew her worth. That knew when to give and when to stop giving. That no longer measured her love in how much she could endure. The press conference was scheduled for next week. Minimal notice. Just enough time to prepare. I didn't tell my daughter, why would I? She never told me she was leaving. Never told me she was moving. Never said a word, while she pocketed $10 million and told the world it was hers. She forgot to look back. And I wouldn't warn her to look ahead. Let her find out like I did, alone, stunned, standing in the middle of a life that didn't belong to her. The truth was on its way, and it had my name on it. The night before the press conference, I couldn't sleep. Not from nerves, not from fear, from memory. I lay on my old twin bed, the ceiling fan whirring above me, and stared into the dark as images played across my mind, like a film no one asked to watch. Her first steps, her first heartbreak. How she once climbed into my bed at 15, cheeks blotchy, mascara smeared, whispering, "Why does everyone leave?" I held her that night until dawn. I never thought she'd be the one to leave me behind. I thought I was building a life where sacrifice was its own reward. That if I just kept giving, kept holding space for her chaos, one day she'd look back and say, "Mom, I see you." She never did. And that used to crush me. But lying there in the quiet, I realized something. I had done everything I could. And she had chosen. People like to say, blood is thicker than water. But they never finish the quote. It's the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Which means the bonds you choose mean more than the ones you're born into. She chose money over memory, ego over honesty, image over me, and I was done blaming myself for that. I thought of all the times I tucked her in when I hadn't slept, paid her rent with money meant for my medicine, canceled doctor appointments, outings with friends, even my own dreams, because hers always seemed more urgent. But now I didn't feel empty. I felt clean. Like everything she'd taken from me had been replaced with something better. Clarity. That next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, tied my hair back, put on the blouse I used to save for holidays. Not flashy, not expensive, but it was mine. The ride to the press conference was quiet. Dana sat beside me, briefcase on her lap, eyes calm. She didn't ask if I was ready. She knew I was. We arrived at the small auditorium, nothing grand, just a podium, a banner, and a room full of local reporters buzzing with questions. The official called my name. Today we're here to clarify the rightful ownership of the $10 million winning ticket purchased at Gas & Go on Route 18. Cameras flashed. I stepped up. My voice didn't shake. "My name is Evelyn Markham," I said. "I bought that ticket, I signed it, and I am the rightful winner." It was over in 3 minutes, but the silence afterward felt eternal. The press tried to ask more. I smiled politely and stepped away, because I didn't need to explain myself anymore. The truth had already done the talking, and somewhere out there, my daughter's perfect world was cracking. I didn't need to watch. I already knew what it looked like when people realized their castle was built on stolen sand. I didn't post a thing after the press conference. Didn't tag, didn't brag, didn't even tell a soul outside the legal circle. But somehow, she still hadn't heard. Because the very next morning, She posted a story from a rooftop lounge, wearing new pearls and holding a cocktail like the world still belonged to her. Manifesting more millions, the caption said. I stared at my phone, lips pressed tight. She had no idea the state had frozen her accounts, no idea the investigation was over, no idea that her name was about to be erased from every inch of the prize she'd claimed. And I didn't owe her a warning. Let her enjoy one last sunset over a rented skyline. I had arranged the press conference for a reason. Minimal notice, quiet location, just enough presence to be official but not enough to alert her before it was done. She didn't know because I hadn't told her, and she hadn't checked because she thought I was incapable of action. That was her blind spot. She thought my silence meant surrender. She forgot who raised her. The woman who sat through school meetings with a spine made of steel. The woman who worked overtime to pay for her braces, then sewed her prom dress from clearance fabric because she couldn't afford the one she really wanted. The woman who stayed up all night to hold her through breakups, anxiety attacks, postpartum tears. I had been her backbone. Until she snapped it. So now I stood alone. Not weaker, not lesser, but clearer. I didn't need the world to know what she did. I just needed the law to. And they did. Dana sent me the updated documents that afternoon. Proof that the state had transferred all winning rights to me. That the payment would be reissued under my name. That the former claimant, my daughter, was no longer legally entitled to a cent. I sat at the kitchen table, paper in hand, and breathed. She still hadn't called. Still hadn't noticed. And part of me didn't want her to. Because the longer she stayed in the dark, the sharper the fall would be. People like her don't see the truth until it's too late. Until the lights flicker off. The bank apps stop working. The friends stop answering. And the people she spent $10 million trying to impress turn their backs without a second glance. That was coming. And when it did, I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't slam any doors. I'd simply look her in the eye and do what she never expected. Walk away. The moment when news finally reached her. The clock on my kitchen wall ticked past 12:18 p.m., and my phone erupted into a frenzy, buzzing like a swarm of angry hornets trapped in a jar. Each vibration rattled the worn oak table beneath it, a relentless reminder of the world demanding my attention. I ignored every call, every chime, every insistent pulse. My heart knew who it was waiting for, and it wasn't the neighbors or the news stations or the curious voices itching for gossip. I sat still, my hands folded in my lap, the weight of years pressing against my chest like a stone smoothed by a river's endless current. I waited for her. At 13:43, I finally picked up. The phone's screen lit up with her name, a name that once felt like family, but now tasted bitter. Like coffee left too long on the burner. I answered, and she didn't bother with pleasantries. No. Hello? No. Are you okay? Her voice tore through the line, raw and jagged, a scream that carried the weight of a life unraveling in real time. You stole my life, she shrieked, her words splintering with panic, the kind that erupts when someone realizes the carefully crafted mask they've worn for years is melting under the glare of truth, exposed for all to see. Her voice was a storm, wild and unmoored, but I stayed quiet, letting the tempest rage. I could picture her pacing, her manicured nails digging into her palms, her world collapsing in the harsh light of a public stage. You think you're clever, don't you? She spat. You think this is justice. You humiliated me in front of everyone. What am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to face them? Her words hung there, trembling, and I let the silence stretch just long enough to feel her squirm. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady, low, a blade honed by years of swallowing my own pain. You could start, I said, by saying thank you. The line went so quiet I could hear her breath hitch, a sharp, startled gasp. For what? She demanded, her voice cracking like thin ice underfoot. I leaned back in my chair, the creak of its old wood grounding me. For the 5 years I kept this house afloat when you couldn't hold a job. For the 3 times I paid off your credit card debt without a word, even when it meant skipping my own bills. For raising your children, while you were out finding yourself in bars and borrowed dreams. For not calling the police that night, you slipped out the door with a lottery ticket that wasn't yours, your hands shaking but your eyes cold. "You're lying," she snapped, but there was a quiver in her voice, a crack in her armor. She knew. She'd always known. "No," I said, my words slicing clean through her denial. "I have proof. I signed the ticket. The store's security footage was verified. I could have taken it back quietly, settled it in the shadows where you left it. But you made sure everyone heard your version, didn't you? Parading it on that stage, spinning your story for the cameras. So I made sure they heard mine." She broke then, not with soft tears or remorse, but with the raw, desperate sobs of someone watching their empire of lies crumble. "You've ruined everything," she choked out, her voice thick with the kind of fear that comes when the world sees you for who you are. "No," I said, calm as a winter morning. "You built this ruin. I just stopped pretending it was a palace." Her breath caught again, and I could almost see her grasping for words, for some way to claw back control. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "I bought things. The house, the car, the clothes, everything. It's all gone now, isn't it? You've taken it all." I didn't flinch. "I've already donated half," I said, my voice unwavering, each word deliberate. "To women's shelters. To single mothers who fight for their kids, not abandon them. To the ones who don't treat their own flesh and blood like garbage left on the curb." She gasped, a sound so sharp it was as if I'd struck her across the face. "You're insane," she whispered, but there was no conviction left, only the echo of her own defeat. "No," I said, my voice soft but unyielding. "I'm done being your shadow, your safety net, your silent partner in a life you didn't earn." And then I hung up. No warning, no hesitation, just the quiet click of the call ending, like the closing of a door I'd held open far too long. The silence that followed was different, not heavy, not suffocating, but light, like the first breath after a long dive underwater. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a mother cleaning up someone else's chaos or a sister carrying someone else's weight. I felt like me, whole, unburdened, the real winner of a game I hadn't chosen to play. But as I set the phone down, a flicker of something stirred in my chest. Not guilt, not regret, but a question. What comes next when you've burned the bridge you spent a lifetime building? I glanced at the clock. The day was still young, and the world outside was waiting to see what I'd do with my victory. The sun had barely crept over the horizon the next morning when the world began to shift under her feet. By dawn, her accounts were frozen, locked tight as a vault. The banks, with their cold efficiency, had acted swiftly once the fraud claim was confirmed, their systems blinking red with the weight of her deception. Her house, that gleaming glass mansion she'd bragged about on every social media post, was now under review, its title tangled in a legal knot she couldn't untie. The car, a sleek convertible she'd driven like a crown, was leased under a name she no longer had legal claim to. Even the jewelry, those glittering chains and rings she wore like armor, and the designer handbags stacked in her closet like trophies of a war she hadn't fought, every single one traced back to receipts, and not one bore her name. The truth was unraveling her life, thread by thread, and I didn't have to lift a finger. That's the thing about theft. It's a house of cards, fragile and fleeting. Once the truth blows through, it collapses under its own weight. I heard the story through our cousin Lila, who'd only recently been pulled back into her orbit after 5 years of silence. Lila called me, her voice a mix of shock and grim amusement, recounting how she, my daughter, the one who'd screamed at me just yesterday, had stormed into a boutique downtown, her usual air of untouchable confidence trailing her like perfume. She'd swiped her card for a silk scarf, something to soothe the sting of her public humiliation. The screen flashed red, declined. She tried another card, her cheeks flushing, as the cashier's polite smile tightened. Declined. Lila said she'd stormed out, screaming about glitches and lawsuits, her voice echoing off the boutique's polished walls. But it wasn't a glitch. It was consequence, cold and unyielding, the kind she never saw coming because she thought no one would dare hold her accountable. Least of all me, the quiet mother who used to braid her hair before job interviews, whispering that she was capable of anything, even when she doubted herself. I guess she forgot I was capable too. I don't know the exact moment it sank in for her. Maybe it was when the letter from the state lottery arrived, its official seal spelling out her defeat, in stark black ink. Maybe it was when the eviction notice was taped to the front door of that mansion, its glass facade reflecting her stunned face. Or perhaps it was when she sat across from a lawyer, her voice trembling as she tried to explain how her own mother could do this to her, only to have the lawyer slide a folder across the table, calm as a summer lake. Inside, security footage from the corner store, grainy but unmistakable, showing her slipping that lottery ticket into her purse. Receipts, meticulously cataloged, none in her name. And my signature, bold and clear, on the ticket that changed everything. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall closing her in. The irony was as sharp as a winter wind. She'd thought money made her untouchable, a queen in a castle built on lies. She'd paraded her wealth, her status, her victory, never once glancing back at the woman who'd propped her up through every fall. But in the end, it wasn't the money that broke her. It was the truth. Relentless, unapologetic, and finally free. It stripped her bare, left her standing in the wreckage of her own choices, while I stood on solid ground for the first time in years. She showed up 3 days after the fallout. No call, no warning, just a frantic knock at the door, like she was still the center of a world that had long since stopped spinning for her. I didn't answer right away. I watched her from the living room window, hair tangled, makeup smeared, wearing a sweatshirt that didn't fit the version of her that had once posed in silk robes and posted about leaving broke energy behind. She wasn't crying. Not really. She was furious. I opened the door an inch, just enough to see her eyes. "Mom," she said, voice sharp, breathless. "We need to talk." I didn't move. There's nothing left to say. "You can't do this to me," she snapped. "I didn't know it was your ticket." "You didn't ask," I replied. "You didn't even check. You just took it and ran." Her mouth tightened. "Okay, fine. Maybe I messed up. But freezing my accounts? Taking it all back? That's not justice. That's revenge." I tilted my head. "You called me a witch, a leech. You posted my humiliation like it was a game." "That was," she started, then stopped, realizing there was no excuse good enough. I waited. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "I need help." There it was. The truth under all the noise. Not remorse, not guilt, just need. She needed me again, but not as a mother, as a resource. I let the silence stretch long enough for her to squirm. Her voice got harder, more desperate. "You've made your point. You got your money. You've got your name on the check. Happy now? Can we go back to normal?" I thought about that for a moment, about what normal used to mean. It meant me carrying her, funding her, cleaning up behind her while she built castles with my bones. I looked her straight in the eye. "Goodbye." Her jaw dropped. "What?" I didn't repeat myself. I just started to close the door. "You'll regret this," she shouted, voice rising. "You think that money's going to make you happy? You think you can buy peace?" I paused, and for the first time I smiled. "No, but I bought you out of my life." Then I shut the door. No slam. Just quiet. Just final.